Well, back to Syria, I want to bring in Zuhdi Jasser with the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. And of course, Zuhdi, we know that this is personal for you. You have friends, you have families in Syria. Tell us just how bad things are. I mean, I've seen pictures of Aleppo and other places there, and it just seems like it can't be worse than what I'm looking at.
Charles, it's basically hell on earth, and I have aunts and uncles and cousins in Damascus and Aleppo, doctors and nurses, and they have had to build hospitals underground because in this conflict the regime has intentionally targeted hospitals and schools where children are because they want to exert ethnic cleansing of especially the Sunni population, but basically to stop the entire revolution, and it could not be worse. And they had a respite when they saw the missiles from America coming in to at least to begin to finally punish the Assad regime. But it was basically a slap on the wrist. And I'll tell you, we just spoke to them, Charles, and the reign of hell has resumed as of yesterday. It's actually worse than ever because they saw once the bombs stopped, they got a green light. Russia, you saw their hissy fit they did at the UN that also gave Assad a green light. So it has not changed, and ultimately the solution they need is really a Balkans-type solution where the UN can put in protection forces, humanitarian corridors, and begin to move forward.
Do you have confidence, though, Zuhdi, that could happen? And this, how many potentially more people would have to die before you could even implement something like that?
Again, you know, Charles, I get it. It's not our war, but there is no other solution. 40 miles from the Israeli border, you had the use of chemical weapons. Both extremes of this conflict, the Assad regime and ISIS, are threats to Israel and to the West. So if you want this radicalization of both sides to go away, you cannot get rid of ISIS and the jihadists without ending the Assad regime and having an area that's protected, no different than we did with the Balkans. So we need to start looking at that solution and begin to look at a third pathway forward with protection forces of NATO. I know we're talking about allies of Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Those are not democracies. This is post-Arab awakening. The West needs to lead the solution. Of
course, you know, there's not a lot of appetite for that, Zuhdi, in this country, although I think there's a serious outpouring when we see the sort of slaughter, when the slaughter incorporates chemical weapons. What about sort of, I guess, the balkanization and setting up, there was a talk of safe zones and things like this, but it always seems tough. Can you legitimately keep something like that even safe? Would the security be there? And, you know, is that really a long-term solution?
Well, in the Balkans, we had no-fly zones that did keep the UN forces safe, and anything would be safer for the Syrian people than they have with this hell on earth that they're living right now. So they're just simply looking at a light rather than the hospice care that the population is in right now. So anything would be better. And I think the West needs to start looking. This is not like Iraq. There's a revolution there. It doesn't need too many soldiers on the ground. It needs a coalition, not just America. President Trump did it right. He got Britain and France involved. We need to get the rest of NATO involved and to begin to put in just protection forces in with a no-fly zone so that there can be corridors for humanitarian care, because, Charles, the Assad regime has no interest in even letting them get water, let alone aid or anything. So this crisis is not going anywhere without some humanitarian aid from the West. And other things really important is to make the price too high for Russia and Iran to continue to colonize Syria.
Well, Zuhdi, I got to tell you, it's hard to believe in 2018 that the world is witnessing something like this, akin to genocide that we all promised would never happen again, but it's happening on our watch. Zuhdi, it's complicated, it's tough. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We'll see you soon.